Hello, artists and animators. Lackadaisy is a long-running webcomic written and drawn by Tracy Butler, which was adapted into an animated pilot by director Fable Siegel. This Eisner-nominated series follows the rise and fall of the Lackadaisy speakeasy as Mitzi May seeks help from unconventional places to keep the dying speakeasy open. Also, the plot takes place in an alternate version of Prohibition-era St. Louis, inhabited entirely by cats. The pilot premiered last month on YouTube and currently has just under 8 million views. And we invited Fable, as well as cleanup artists and animators, Sam, Jacob, and Anthony, to speak with our community to discuss the production process behind Lackadaisy. So Fable, Sam, Jacob, Anthony, welcome to the live stream.
Thanks for having me.
Nice.
It's going great. So I wanted to ask, how would you describe Lackadaisy's style of animation and what was inspired by? And I'll start with you, Fable, since you're the director.
Yeah. So Lackadaisy was very much heavily influenced by the Xerox era of animation, which was like roughly from the 60s to the 80s, before the advent of digital technology, like taking over the cleanup process. What they, as a way of cutting costs, instead of taking rough drawings by the animators and painstakingly re-inking all their work onto a plastic sheet, which is called a cell, and then flipping it over and painting out on the opposite side, what they started to do during the Xerox era is, with the advent of the Xerox machines, like a copy machine, they were able to take those drawings and directly scan them and print out those pencil lines onto plastic sheets and then color those. And the result was like all the rough pencil work from the animator was retained. And so the raw energy of those sketches was also like preserved. And even though at the time it was regarded as like the cheap process, you know, it was not considered like as high art, I guess, as the, you know, what could be done if you did all the line work by hand. It captured something that goes missing when you add that extra cleanup step, which is that the animators just raw work with the suggestion of like the volumes and like everything that was involved in construction of their work was still there. And it always fascinated me watching films like 101 Dalmatians or Great Mouse Detective, and being able to see, like, get a sense of the drawing, like the drawing quality, like the fact that it was made by some human hand was so front and center, that I just really loved that look. And it went away with the digital era. It went away with the digital animation in general. It's so easy for us to create a perfectly smooth line that I wanted to make something that called back to some of that those older films that often had like a grittier texture to them, both visually and even story-wise. So when developing Lackadaisy, we wanted something that would give that feeling of nostalgia so that you could then turn around and like critique that feeling, since Lackadaisy is so much about nostalgia as like a powerful force that motivates people to retain stuff from the past, but at what cost? And so we wanted to have a look that helped like trigger that same kind of subconscious feeling. And also, my apologies for Mr. Interruptus here. This is Nico, and he is not aware he's being interviewed. He just wants smoochies.
He's got thoughts. He's got thoughts on Lackadaisy.
He has thoughts.
We are getting a lot of comments about Nico, so and they're positive.
Or mango. Yeah. Hello, I know. Hey.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to go around and just ask what everybody's experience was like with xerography and the sort of style before they joined the project. Sam, what was your experience with the style?
Well, the kind of like full animation that was done with the lines and stuff, it's something that I really like doing. And I also really like animating cats. So when I applied, I did have a lot of kind of full animated cats in my reel. And then when I saw the character models and stuff, it was something that I think I already kind of meshed with, that sort of sketchier look. I love retaining the rough lines within the final as well, which is part of that look. So I really sort of tried my best to immediately get started and try to capture the sort of xerography style and that kind of full animation, but there's still that kind of roughness to it. Like, what's the thing where they say that like once something is gone, it's like its imperfections sort of make it what it is, like VHS grain and the sound of like how a record sounds. So it's like that sort of flaw in the process is what gives it that look that people really enjoy.
Yeah, I think one thing that like you and Fable both touched on too is that it's a way of also seeing the rough animation and seeing the process behind it that you usually don't see in animated productions. Usually you don't see the rough animation.
Yeah, usually you try to make it look as polished as possible so no one will know the rough animation even existed. But I did really enjoy how they really wanted to push that this was like a hand-drawn 2D production, so you could see the construction lines on the characters and these things that would be considered like flaws normally that were sort of to add to the look of the film. I thought was a very interesting choice to replicate that old method. Yeah.
And Jacob, what sort of like a affinity or connection to xerography have you had?
Well, I grew up watching a lot of Disney films. Obviously, my one particular favorite of mine growing up is Robin Hood, which was like right smack dab in that Xerox era, and like had the sketchy lines. You could see the construction lines. So I've always enjoyed that kind of aesthetic, and as I've gotten older and like gotten into animation, like I appreciate it all the more. So mostly for the fact that you can see some tendencies when it changes between animators. Like some animators will have like the guidelines on the face in different spots. Some will do like the full, like just seeing the thought process in each of the drawings and just kind of like the individual expression between each of the people animating on the project. Even though like it all still looks uniform and on model, just seeing those bones is like an interesting way to just kind of like see how different kinds of artists approach the same thing from different angles.
Yeah, there are certain people who like watch animated content, films and TV shows, and have a very good eye for spotting. This is Posey. Hi, Posey.
Yes, welcome to the Lackadaisy chat. There will be cats.
It's all about cats.
But there are people who can like watch a Disney film and see like, okay, that one I know that was animated by Ollie Johnston. I never developed the skill of recognizing, okay, that was the person who animated that. But I think it's interesting that you sort of have more tells with geography of being able to tell like who worked on which scene.
Yeah, and I think that's like a great benefit that even though we have a lot of more advanced tools and we can get things to look incredibly clean and polished in the modern day with what we have, and that's great, but it kind of gives the illusion that like it's all just kind of like one thing when like almost every project is a huge collaboration between so many talented creators, and just having a visual signifier in the work itself to kind of like indicate that to the audience that like, if you spend the time and like kind of look at it, you can identify certain tells or like ways of approaching scenes. You're really like, oh, that's that guy. I love that guy. Like that's something that I feel like is kind of lost in a lot of modern productions, and it's just wonderful that Fable and the cleanup Fable Tracy and the cleanup team Ashley and Z really wanted to bring that back to or Not back. Yeah, back. Yeah, we're bringing it back.
Yeah, we had to invent a new process to make it look that way because,
Yeah.
like, as your viewers might know, Toon Boom is very good at like the very uniform.
Very
glossy
good.
stuff.
Very
Very
good
good.
tool.
So we had to develop like an entirely new brush and like and texture system that would respond to changes in the frames and figure out how to like automate that or like at least do it efficiently. So the tools that Toon Boom provided were very good for that. It would have been much more difficult in some other programs.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But,
speaking to
to
that,
plug your product. It's like,
Yeah.
but genuinely,
hashtag sponsored.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But kind of speaking to that, just the way that we approach the cleanup process with the tools available, we are able to do, again, another thing that I think's lost in a lot of like more polished modern productions is the feeling that like each frame is an individual drawing, even though we kind of fudged it. They're not everything is always like the same drawing. Like we did reuse some stuff from time to time.
Oh yeah, no, I told them, I'm like, look, for sanity's sake, reuse where you can, because animation is hard, and like where you can find efficiencies, you do it.
It's
But
only
if
cheating if you get caught.
Yeah, but if you can still make it like look the same and like it doesn't like stand out awkwardly when you do have to puppet something slightly, but it also isn't like outside of like what even animators did at the time, where they would just like physically take a piece of paper and like shift it, or sometimes they would just reuse like a whole piece of something. It depended on the production, but oftentimes you would see like reuse happening there as well.
Oh well, Robin Hood, like he mentioned, because they had a very low budget, they reused.
Oh yeah, they reused the entire
film.
Yeah.
They would just trace over it with a new model.
That movie's basically just copy pasted.
It is.
Yeah,
like
we didn't reuse animations. Sometimes there would be reuse of like a body part
Yeah.
temporarily. But again, like that is actually a genuine that technique that even existed with the analog process.
Yeah.
Just it's a lot easier to do now.
Yep.
But also it's a lot easier to make it very obvious that it was like a puppet. So we would translate the texture of the line. And by translate, I mean like we would like move the line the way that it would decide like where the texture would start in order to make it look like it was entirely redrawn, which is often referred to as line boil in our field. But and it's funny just how like a subtle little line boil helps keep it from looking like too mechanical, basically.
Exactly. Like
that plus the paint boil that we added did a lot to help it like feel way more analog, even without like adding that extra labor into it. You can't have my coffee. You can't have my coffee. You're a parrot.
Anthony, what was your experience with like xerography style before working on Lackadaisy?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, they did such a good job.
Wolfhawk is so pretty.
They did that as like that character thing where like the people in the town are drawn with that very like clean little cut style, and everyone in the woods is the sketchy. It's awesome.
It was really cool.
Brilliant detail.
And start like messing around with like the expectations of their look, where the townspeople were very how they usually do things, and then the wolves were like so much more organic and wild looking, even with their line work. That was really cool to see, and I just love setups to that. Hey. I miss director commentaries in particular.
Yeah.
It's like it'd be so easy to do that in the streaming era, but you don't. They never pair that anymore. I'm like, oh come on, I want to hear like how they made it.
Like I want to hear your thought process. Like why did you make the decisions you made? Like
that was
so
cool.
fascinating.
Or like sometimes they would like just make off the cuff remarks. You're like, I hate that scene.
Yeah.
It was so annoying to get like.
I had like the
Yeah.
Incredibles DVD as a kid, and the Incredibles DVD has like cut storyboard animatics, and I would watch it all the time. But there was one where like Mr. Incredible like pretends to like get his arm cut off or something. he like puts it in the garbage disposal, but it doesn't work because his arm is really strong.
Right.
And it like breaks the garbage disposal, and he pulls it out, but it like still scared. Like he does something to like prank someone, and it scared me so bad as a kid. I like hated it. I was like, well, I see what now as an adult. I'm like, I see how they cut that out of the movie.
Yeah, that was probably a smart decision.
Yeah. I was like,
Fans in
ew.
practices probably saw that scene and was like,
Yeah.
No, not good for children.
And it wasn't because I was so scared. Yeah.
Some quality frames there.
You hear that,
It
everybody?
was.
Bring back
I think it
director's
was a night.
commentaries.
He did
We
something.
want
Yes,
more of
Checked
it.
out his arm. I don't remember.
It's like
Fable.
Netflix, if you want people to come back, what if you just added director's commentary to the stuff you have?
Oh yeah.
What if you did that?
Fable, I had a question. So I noticed that we have a teammate in common. You mentioned like my colleague Mariev, also known as Z-Bird Brain,
Yeah.
was credited as a Toon Boom wizard on Lackadaisy, and I'm just curious, like, what did
Yes.
that role entail?
That was basically so I was very much a newbie to Toon Boom, and I had Ashley Nichols as my lead cleanup and development person on the project, and she knew Toon Boom better and was building a node system to help with some of the things, the challenges that we were facing. Because like I knew that we wanted you to do like the geography look, and so we were working out ways to use the node system to pre-build certain aspects of the look of the characters so that like the line work would have like this subtle drop shadow that we would be able to separate certain elements, and we're trying to figure out like how that would integrate into, you know, taking it into After Effects, which has like certain other tools that we want to make use of. And I came across Z's stuff on YouTube because Z actually has like this really, really helpful YouTube channel where she goes into great detail about all the different tools that Toon Boom provides.
Super good.
And I was watching one of her live streams, and we were just chatting, and she mentioned, "Oh yeah, you know, I saw that you guys were doing Lackadaisy, and like I'd be like, it'd be really cool if I could help out with that." And I was like, "Really?" So I just like messaged her. I was like, actually, we would love to like get some help on X, Y, and Z. And at the time, I didn't even know that she worked for you guys. I was just like, yeah, you clearly know Toon Boom better than me. Could you help some insight on this? And she helped develop that node system way stronger, like the paint boil effect that I wanted that would make it look kind of like someone actually hand painted the fills of the characters instead of just having like, again, a uniform color. I did not know about some of the features like exposure fill and how that could be tied to a texture node. And so we were able to automate that and make it look like even more analog than I think we would have been able to achieve without that knowledge. And just anytime we had issues with Toon Boom, we were like, oh, how do we do this? Or like trying to better understand systems. Like she was really, really helpful and being the person we would turn to and be like, help, I'm dumb.
Please fix.
Educate my dumb, slow brain. I need to fill it with information, please.
Make Toon Boom go good, please.
It's broken. Or did I break it? Oh, I broke it. So the but yeah, she was an extremely helpful team member. And I remember even like in chatting with us about our needs, like she would sometimes bring stuff up to your team. So I think in your latest release, you actually have a node that now does all the line boiling automatically. And I'm like, oh, that would have been useful when we were producing. But like you guys only came out with that like just as soon as we wrapped up. And I'm like, oh, well, that will make things easier for us in the future, at least, as we continue to make more. Hello, I know. Yes, you are involved. Do you have opinions on cartoons? You are a cartoon.
I think he's feeling the outrage that I'm feeling, that like we don't have to manually do the line boiling anymore. That would have been cool to have.
Yeah, that would have been awesome. It's just one less thing to call out in notes, basically. I mean, like it's fun if you're able to choose, like if the texture is really extreme, then being able to manually do it could be helpful. But I don't think our texture was so extreme that you couldn't automate it. But I imagine if you had line work that were like the roughness of the line was way more pronounced, you probably would want to manually do it, just in case it started to conflict with the line work that you had made. But yeah, that's a really cool tool.
I think on our end, it's really helpful when you have productions that try new things and are a little bit outside of the norm, because that leads to us adopting new techniques too.
Yeah, no, it's really cool that you guys were actually responsive to stuff that we were doing, and yeah, it's just I appreciate that you guys listed a lot more. Like, again, like, I'm not necessarily trying to plug Toon Boom here. Like, in all fairness, I think TV Paint's really cool. I like animating clip as well, but I do appreciate how responsive you guys have been, especially compared to Adobe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. The stream would turn entirely into like Adobe hate stream. We were allowed.
Yeah, we can't dwell on that.
No, we can't.
Since we're not going to do that, I wanted to
not gonna
ask
do that.
Fable, how does Lackadaisy compare to other projects that you worked on in the past, and what did this project allow you to do differently?
Well, on this project, so most of the time, short films that I've made myself have been like very small teams, or in the case of this Reanimate that I hosted, where I did this All Dogs Go to Heaven Reanimate, where we reanimated the entirety of Can't Keep a Good Dog Down, and that was fun. You know, that was like a bunch of volunteers, because none of that was going to make any money or anything. We were just doing it in our spare time for fun. And that was really cool. But everybody was using different software. And in the case of when I have done my own stuff, it doesn't really matter what I'm using or like how I'm communicating with people, because there's like maybe just me, maybe there's one other person. So I just have to make sure that whatever I'm handing them is as clear as possible. And this is where my industry experience came in handy, because having worked in studios before, a lot of what I do is taking whatever I'm presenting to people. In this case, usually I was doing storyboards and making sure that the next person who grabbed it was able to understand perfectly like what I was illustrating, you know, not just the character model, but also the intention of the movement or expressions, some of the intention of like a cut here or there. Now, as a storyboard artist, you're not necessarily or should be responsible for animatic editing, but you still need to kind of suggest how things are going to go. How transitions will go to that animatic editor as well. And clarity is always really, really important. So taking my experience from the industry and putting it into this indie production, I was able to build up a system where it's like communicating between different people was essential. Like at all times, I told people, consider who's going to get your work down the line and make sure that it's clear for their sake, because otherwise they're going to have to pick up whatever you slacked off on. So like if you are animating, you got to make sure it's tied down enough that the cleanup artists aren't guessing which line they have to trace, you know. And if you're the cleanup artist, you have to make sure that everything is set up in such a way that when the compositor picks it up, that they're not like, oh, this is a huge mess, I have to like redo all this other stuff because there's like holes in the in what I'm doing here, or like it wasn't layered properly, because it will inevitably happen. But you want to reduce the situations in which it happens as much as possible, because it will happen simply because it's like over 100 people working together on a project. There's going to be variations. And as you know, your first shot and how you approach it is going to be different than the last shot and how you approach it, just because experience. So making a really strong effort to minimize that as much as possible, and making sure that the standardization was in how we delivered things to people and what they expected to receive. That's where standardization was like the most important. So yeah, that was helpful. And also just learning how to work with a huge team of people and try to keep up with all that, and necessity of delegation. And there's a limit to how much you can delegate when you're an indie and you don't have money and you don't have a lot of manpower. Like, even though we have more manpower on this than your average indie production, it was still upon me to like wear 15 or 20 hats at any given time. And a lot of what I learned was like just how much I need support staff. I think after the project was done, most of our crew, when I was like, okay, postmortem, how do we like, what can we do to improve the pipeline? And one of the most common comments was like, you need support people. I was like, yeah,
You need
right.
to go to bed.
I need to go to bed.
sleep.
Yeah, I need to go to bed. Sometimes I have to go to bed. Right. You're better about going to bed than me, and you're not good at going to bed, are you? No.
So going around the table, Sam, how did Lackadaisy compare to other projects they worked on in the past, and what did this production allow you to do differently?
Lackadaisy was like my first like professional production, but since then I also did some work on Hell of a Boss and some other things. And Lackadaisy, like the team was big, but not too big, I think, where it's like you could easily communicate with people and things wouldn't really get lost in the shuffle or anything like that. And Fable was always sitting in the voice chat. So if you did have a very pertinent question, you could just join the voice chat and be like, hey, can you look at this?
Yeah.
Which was nice because they were very accessible. And there was Newt, who's very, very helpful with Blender and all the 3D stuff, which
shout
was
out to
awesome.
Newt.
Yeah, shout out to Newt because
director, did a lot of
he was very
stuff
helpful
with Blender integration. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I did like having the extra support because we had the 3D guns for the characters, and at one point I imported the gun I had animated in Blender into Toon Boom to animate Seraphine shooting it, and but somehow when I exported the gun, it just lost all its texture, and I did not know how to fix it. And I had Newt come tell me how to fix it, and when he was like, "I don't know how you did this," I was like, "I don't know how I did this either." Like, because like weird stuff like that. But yeah, it was very helpful because I'd never used the 3D assets before. Like that was a new thing on this production, especially like I didn't really use the car rig too much. I mostly had guns. But I did learn a decent amount about, like animating the prop, have the character hold it, and how to export it so it can be composited and whatever, and how to not, export it with texture. Apparently, I don't know how but it was like the textures like vanished, like they like disconnect. We don't know where they went. So he had to send me the model again, and we had to like Frankenstein the textures onto my animation. It was weird. But yeah, I really enjoyed the vibe of the production as well. I thought everyone was very, very nice and welcoming. It was never like, oh, you can't like message this person because they're too busy. Like people would usually always help you out, kind of deal, which I thought was very nice.
If I knew somebody was busy, I'd be like, I would be like, okay, like this is going to take this long to get back to this person. Here's what we can do in the meantime. So, but yeah, like communication, like as much direct communication as possible, I felt was essential. Having been on productions where you were like siloed from different departments, basically, and for a collaborative medium, being unable to talk to the other people on your team and know
at every level
to stitch together is very limiting. So.
I would also like to just do a quick thank you to technical directors everywhere, just in general.
Yeah.
Y'all are godsends.
Yeah. It's like every production that you see basically lives and dies by its IT department because there is no cartoon if computer go die.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
Newt is probably one of the most dedicated, reliable IT people I've ever worked with. So shout out to Newt.
Shout out to Slimy Boy.
Yeah. He's a good lad.
He's a good lad.
Go give him some support.
Continue on the table. Jacob, how does Lackadaisy compare to other projects that you worked on in the past, and what did this production allow you to do differently?
Well, I've had a very good fortune of being able to be a part of some like very notable independent productions. I was on the Has-Been Hotel pilot. I started and I'm currently on Hell of a Boss, and I'm also helping out on the upcoming Farfetch show. And I met Fable through the work on the Has-Been Hotel pilot, and Ashley. Both of them were like, hey, we need cleanup people. So they brought me on the Lackadaisy, which I'm very grateful for. And one of the kind of going back to what Sam was saying, one of the biggest differences in a lot of the other things I've worked for is just having Fable or Tracy just always in our work server. Just they're always in there voice chat while they're doing their work. So just always available for like any questions, anything that needs to get done, like having that direct line of access, not only to the directors, but just everybody you're working with in every kind of department. Is like revolutionary, honestly. That way you can kind of pick the brains and see like how any department or work you're not familiar with that's like not your wheelhouse, you can kind of ask them like, okay, how can I make your life easier so that you're not killing yourself over the work that I'm doing?
No, that's the job that I am for doing for you. It's like I'm trying to make your job easier because it makes everything easier altogether. It's
exactly.
Like, it's a lot of work. It's really hard to make a cartoon, and so whatever way you can to find some way of smoothing it over, especially when you're deliberately emulating a more complex process than is typical nowadays for animation, means that you have to put every effort you can to make everything else as smooth as possible, because you're going to give people a headache. Even if it's a fun headache, it's still a headache. So
right.
If they're going to be dumping that much energy into this, then you have to make sure that you take away the energy from that. So that was things like not asking people to draw guns.
Yeah.
Because then like 90% of the notes would be fix the gun. So it's like, it's a 3D model, don't worry about it. Or like the car, or like any solid prop like that. It's like, if we could get away with making it a 3D model, we would. And putting a lot of effort into just how to make that look like it works with the character. And it also like matches the Xerox era approach anyway, because they would use models more often than you think.
Yeah,
they would just be physical models, because, you know, for a good while there, until like the late 80s, they didn't have computers to help bolster that. But like, I remember I was watching The Great Mouse Detective, and like Basil has his violin, and it's just a single picture of a violin.
Yeah.
They have just like a couple different angles of it. Like, they're not drawing that violin.
The deer antlers in Bambi, I think.
Deer antlers in Bambi.
Or shout out to Cruella de Vil's car.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, they were like, no, fuck that as well. They didn't want to. They're like, no, it's not.
I mean, why would you?
Yeah.
You made it. You designed it like that. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, it's like we could. The problem is it would just take like 3 times longer to make sure it didn't look messed up. And it would be harder to give the work to like a huge variety of people, because you'll have like 1 or 2 people who could do the car that well, but you know, they have to do other car shots then, or just anything else. And so you have to put other hands on other shots, because we had like 400 shots.
Yeah.
So it's like, even if you have, a lot of times you'll have somebody who's like really good at like certain things, but you can only use them for some shots because they're occupied. Like, they already are doing their job. So you need to be able to give other shots to other people. So it's like, how do you make it easier for that other person for one that isn't their great strength? So that's part of the process. You know, not everybody is like the superstar at animating water or whatever. So what can you do to make it easier for somebody else where it's like, that's not their wheelhouse, but they can still do it, and not have it be a nightmare for note giving, where like that chokes everything up and things don't move forward.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And, kind of building off of that, another thing that was like I super appreciated like on this production was just like the ease and the readiness of communication between like everybody on board, and a very professional and understanding approach would be like, hey, I am working on some other projects right now, or there's like a life event that's happening. I'm unable.
There's a pandemic.
Yeah, there's a pandemic.
and there's a global disaster occurring right now.
Things are bad.
I take a few extra days? And
can I take some few extra days, or I'm not going to be able to hit this particular deadline. Fable was a champion, but like, don't worry, I can take this shot. I can move it somewhere else. Or if you need more work because rent's due, I can give you more shots. Like, just very flexible, understanding, not shaming you for like, okay, you can't finish this work. Just very understanding. Like, thank you for telling me you can't get this done.
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna make
don't
sure it can
gain
get
anything
done.
by it's like there's no point in me like getting angry at anybody. Like even if like on the side I might be frustrated, it doesn't matter because that doesn't like motivate you guys more. It's just the work just needs to get done. So the more efficient way to do that is to just come at stuff neutrally and just be like, okay, how do we solve the problem? Rather than how dare you, and taking it personally. It's like this is just problem solving. That's largely what filmmaking is. It's just like problem solving. Guess what?
It's also at the end of the day easier on you too, because then you don't have to sort of live with that frustration. Anthony, I want to give you a chance to answer the same question. So, how did this production compare to other projects you worked on in the past, and what did this production allow you to do differently?
Well, I've worked on a bunch of different productions, and funnily enough, they've all been on Toon Boom. Like I've directed productions, commercials. Like I work on Hell of a Boss too, like to this very day still. And I was still working on Hell of a Boss when I got hired on Lackadaisy, and just like having to like switch between like productions was like so different. So remembering everything is always been like fun, but like getting into it, it's always great. But like the one thing like that I love about this production, like more than anything, has always been like the sheer communication and support from Fable. Because like whenever like I have a question about everything, it made me not afraid to ask questions. Because like sometimes like you're expected to know everything. So like when you don't like not sure about something, best thing to do is like ask questions, because like if you don't ask questions, it could actually cause a lot of problems for a production. So having the courage to like ask questions.
Yeah, I would tell
really
people it's
help
like
everything.
don't worry about looking stupid. Like even if it's a repetitive question, it's a lot easier for me to just answer the question than deal with the result of you trying to answer the question yourself, because sometimes that would result in pipeline issues. So it's a lot harder to unwind those creative decisions, let's say, than it is to just have someone come to you and be like, hey, what did we do about this again? And in the interest of that, we also like had really extensive documentation to help answer questions. So
like everything was like all cleared out. There's a whole channel for like models and like guide videos and everything. And like and just Fable being in like voice chat all the time. So like you're learning a lot about like animation like on this production. And like that's my favorite part about working on anything, just learning something new, because like I always get so excited just learning about something like I don't know about.
That's one thing I really
to your point too.
Oh, sorry.
To your point too, like knowing how to ask questions is a really good soft skill, right? Like it's not something that everybody joins a production first day like knows how to do, but you have to know like what you're asking, what you're trying to clarify, and that's like proactive communication.
And it's always really good if like who to turn to. Also, if you have to ask questions on productions, like I remember when Storyboard Pro started becoming like way more prominent in our business, and there was a huge like lack of knowledge on how to operate it, and the documentation online was not nearly as thorough as it is now, because it was just not as popular a program. Before that we were largely doing stuff by hand or in Photoshop or whatever. And I remember the first production I jumped on where we started using Storyboard Pro. Like I just sat down, I was just like ingesting tons of information, that anything I could find online for any particular task that I was trying to do. And my teammates around me did not necessarily know like how to seek out that information, or like basically how to Google foo their way into answers. And so rather quickly, I realized that like other folks on the team, when they were struggling, I'd be like, hey, like, what if you try this? And they started understanding that like I was the person to come to if you had like a Storyboard Pro question. And if I didn't know it, I'd be like, okay, let me find out, because that's a good question. And I would sit there and walk them through not just, what I had figured out, but also how I had figured it out, so that everybody could like move a little faster. And, why not use that same process in general? Like humans learn from each other. Like even if I, as the director on this project, like had a lot of information in my head, I'd also try to encourage people to like chat to each other, like talk to each other, learn from each other, because they would have, knowledge and skills that I didn't, and that I learned a lot from them as well. So, taking advantage of like the big brain trust that basically is a production to,
that's another one
get
too.
to answers faster.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like having everyone right there, you can like talk to anyone, and everyone was just free to talk to each other,
Mhm.
like more than any production I've ever been on. And that just like getting to like know the team is like the best part, because animation is a collaborative effort.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like getting to know your team, like you're getting to know more of the production itself.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and you just get to meet super talented, like amazing people, like just from working on the same thing and just talking and learning like from one
Mhm.
another. And that's one of the things I really like about doing so much cleanup for animation, is you get to see how people animate, and then you be
Mhm.
like, oh, that's why. Oh, I see why they put that frame there, or like how they did the spacing here, and then you can learn from it. And you can absorb their power, and then you can surpass them, and you can become the strongest animator.
Yeah, I tell people who want
On that
to
note,
get into cartoons, I'm like, a great way to get into any production is try to find those like in between positions where you're doing a task that helps take this to that person, basically, because you're gonna learn so much about not just how to do things correctly, but also how things fuck up, which is like
Oh,
more
yeah.
informative than it's like, oh, that was a bad idea, and then
Failure's a
learn-
pretty good teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we were not perfect, by the way. There were mistakes that were made. There were mistakes made with how I built the pipeline, which we had to pay for later on. Like, and I was learning a lot about how to be a more effective director through the process, like by learning from other people and listening to them. So you pay for that, but like it's always a good idea to always keep in mind, it's like you are problem solving. And sometimes it's frustrating, and sometimes you want to sit down and you just like want to go punch something, but you can go do that and not put that on your team.
Yep.
That's like, you can go be frustrated and understand that this is just your human reaction, a human emotion. It's fine. Go play a video game, go yell at the video game for a bit, and then come back to people. And like, now that you've worked out that emotion, it's like it's easier to come back to people and be like, okay, let's work out the problem. So if you do get to that point where you're up here because there's deadlines and budget, and so and so is waiting for such and such, and all that is like really frustrating. But there's outlets that you have, and so long as healthy outlets, healthy coping mechanisms for the frustration that is cartoons, and then you come back to your team and you just approach them like other people who are all nobody's like coming into this and going like, I want to mess everything up. It's like, that's not why people get into cartoons. At least I hope not, but I imagine someone's not going to get very far if their whole goal is to gum up the works and be the monkey wrench.
I'm a little trickster.
Shout out to Monkey Wrench, by the way.
Shout out to Monkey Wrench.
Yeah, shout out to Monkey Wrench.
Shout out to Zerel.
Yeah.
I can imagine playing like a video game to like get out of the frustration and be like, damn it, Mario, how come I can't get Rocky to do the thing?
On that note, I want to ask, do you have advice for artists who are interested in working on a project like Lackadaisy? And I'll start with Jacob.
Honestly, from my experience, just make stuff. Like, if animation or just making a project is something that you want to do in your heart of hearts, you want to make something, just do it and get it out there. Because one fantastic thing about the digital era that we live in is the ease of putting things out in front of people is easier than it's ever been before. And actually, the entire reason that I'm where I am now is one of my friends, Pui. She's another animator. She helped out on Lackadaisy, has been hell of a even Rise of the TMNT. Like, Pui's a fantastic animator. Pui's great. She hosted a Reanimate collaboration for Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm a big Yu-Gi-Oh! Nerd, and I was fresh out of art school, and I was like, I want to animate. So I did a bunch of shots for that Reanimate, and from that, Pui directed me towards Nico on Too Loud, and that was my first professional thing. And then at the premiere for Too Loud, I met Viv, the creator of Has Been a Hell of It, and I also met Ashley, the creator of Farfetched and Clean Up Lead for Lackadaisy, met them, and then things just kind of snowballed. So just make stuff. If there's
you
like a
make
fan
stuff, you meet people, you work with other people making stuff.
exactly, and
yeah.
make stuff that you're passionate about. Don't try to play into, oh, what's popular or like what's going to get me the most views. No, never that. Make stuff you want to see. Make stuff that gets you excited. Make stuff that you never want to shut up about.
Yeah.
Like, get that out there.
Insufferable nerd.
Yeah.
Because they'll do a better job on it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, Tracy just started a webcomic. Tracy even admitted that, like, she didn't think anyone was going to pay attention. Like, who's going to read a comic about a bunch of cats being rum runners in St. Louis? Like, it's a bizarre thing, but Tracy loved it. Pat was passionate about it and made it. And now look where it is. Like, that's how everything starts. So if you want to get into this field, or like you got something you want to make, just do it. Literally just make the thing and put it out there for people to see.
Sam in particular has worked on a number of Warriors Cats multi-animator projects. So like you want to talk about like you started doing those things and then you decided to make a career out of it.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, like you know, like 14 or 15 years old, I animated on like Limited Antenna when I was younger, and then they closed that, and then I got older and I was like going on YouTube and being like Warrior Cats A and B, and I was seeing things that these other kids were making with like MS Paint and Adobe Animator. At the time it was Adobe Flash.
R.I.P. Flash.
R.I.P. Flash. So then I started, you know, doing that, and then there was this thing that came around on YouTube in like the early 2010s, in the mid 2010s, where like people would post a song and then cut up chunks of the song and be like, at this part, Tiger Star gets disemboweled, and so then
as you do,
you would like sign up, like apply for parts, and the person would give everyone a part, and then every kid that would get a chunk of the song would basically animate like a Warrior Cats A and B, but just for like 7 seconds of like what they were told to animate, and then they would put it all together. And then they started getting more sophisticated, where like it was like teenagers were making like whole like character design sets, like visual development packs that would give you, so all of the cats and every shot that everyone was doing would be consistent and everything.
You're like reinventing the production process.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Videos about feral cats.
I have a fantastic idea. It's called the character sheet. Now hear me out.
Exactly. Like, because this was a foreign because before you would just be like, they'd be like, animate J-Feather here or whatever, and then every kid would just use their own design for J-Feather. So it's actually sometimes interesting because you can see how each of these people would draw the cat differently, but sometimes you'd be like, who is that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would be like incomprehensible to anybody who didn't understand.
You did not read the book.
Yeah, but it was like fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, and I did that for years, and then because you're kind of trying to get better so that your Warrior Cats animations look better than other people's Warrior Cats animations.
Healthy competition with each
better
other.
At animating, yeah. And then I built like my original whatever internet following on my art accounts around that. Now I just draw anime characters, but like it did definitely help me get a job on Lackadaisy, because I was like, well, I can animate cats. Like, I understand how cats work, right?
Calling all Warriors Cats animators.
A lot of my friends were also Warrior Cats animators who then got put on Lackadaisy. My friend Julia, she was a Warrior Cats animator, and she made The Legend of Pee-Pee, and she's working on Moon Girl.
I love that short.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah,
That's
she's
awesome.
a Warrior Cats animator. Can you tell now? Because the cat's being short.
It's cats all the way down.
I had
it's all
had a
connected.
student work on that.
Yeah, right. It's it's interesting how many people that we were just teenagers animating like emo cats, like 8-9 years later, like I know like 10 people who are now like in the industry because they got their love of animating from these collaborative free projects that just kids were doing for fun.
Yeah.
And now they got good enough just doing that, they were able to develop the skill to like get hired.
Yeah, so for anybody who's ever looking for like, where do I start? It's like, you that's a good place. And if you're like, but where do I find that? It's like, talk to people. There's no
Warrior
like...
Cat maps are so sophisticated now. It's actually insane.
Yeah.
I watched one recently where I was like, this is like 9 minutes long and like
Yikes.
fully animated at like a professional level.
I see some of them now doing like Wings of Fire maps instead, which is
with the
like
dragons.
Warriors Cats, but it's dragons or something. And there's always like some fan project somewhere. Or you could like if you're like, where do I find the people to do that? It's like, you could do it. You could set up a thing with like your friends. Yeah. It could be really goobery and
it just started out with kids doing it with their groups of friends.
Yeah.
It's like these videos get like 5 million views more. Like they get millions of views. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like one of them was to a Disney song from Tangled the series, and the Warrior Cat map of that song has more views than the Disney YouTube upload of the song, which is
pretty popular too.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate Warrior Cats.
No.
Well, I'm just kind of fascinated by like teenagers reinventing the animation pipeline, like a bunch of philosophers,
like organically,
each independently discovering calculus or something.
It's interesting.
There's some platonic ideal of the animation process out there.
Now they do storyboard, like the really big popular maps now are storyboard maps where like one person will make a storyboard and then they basically divvy it up like an actual production now. Like it's reached the point where like I was on one and I was like, this is just like a normal production. Like it's not even just like, here's the song, go animate your cat doing whatever. Like now you have to like check in, there's deadlines, they give you like a character turnaround, there's like color scripts for different parts.
It's probably
like,
worth defining what maps means too.
Multi-animator project.
Yeah. It's the same as those reanimates, basically.
Yeah, it's like a big fan project, but it's called a multi-animator project because it used to be. They used to be multi-editor projects.
Yeah,
that's what they used to be. Was kids just editing like chunks of pictures together, and then they're like, why don't we animate this ourselves? And they started calling multi-animator.
Yeah, especially for stuff like books that don't have visuals or don't have like visuals at least. And like the only difference between like reanimate and a map is that a reanimate typically has something that already exists that people are basing their work off of. So a lot of that work has already been done, and they're just kind of like using that as a template for whatever they want. And so often in a reanimate, the disconnect between the different scenes is the point. But in a map, like that can vary wildly depending on what the goals of the team are. These things don't make money, by the way. Like these are all they don't make money. It's like there's no way they can make money because like they're gonna get copyright strike go to hell and back. But
it's hard-boiled passion.
Yeah, do not let money be your motivator to get into like this industry.
No,
if you don't.
All right, I'm gonna cancel my SpongeBob reanimated project.
It's something you can make money doing animation. It's just that if you think you're gonna make money by doing reanimates and maps, I have some bad news for you. But there's way more indie projects like that do pay, even if they're like most of them are not going to be like. I'm sorry. I get offended on talk of money.
You dashed his dreams, dude.
Some people have to pay taxes, Nico.
But Angry Beavers reanimate's gonna fall apart now.
Oh no!
No,
buddy, it's okay. It's okay. But yeah, to get the skills that you need in order to have a job doing stuff, that's a good entry point because you're gonna learn a lot of skills that translate really well, honestly, to the working environment. So where if either it's indie or it's like industry, whatever, people do need you with like your weird ability to like draw and animate cats really well. Like there's a need for that. There's a need somewhere, and like the more independent projects there are, because there's no way that the animation industry can like possibly host every single person that is like seeking out a job. So if you're just like, well, I just want to do a project, and you're able to like at least shell out some money to whoever you're bringing on board for your personal thing, and you get your paperwork, situated, you can do that. The barrier of entry is lower now than it's ever been. Like the tools are very, very accessible. Like it's easy to put just about anything up on YouTube. And depending on like how you plan everything out like that, it won't necessarily pay off. I mean, that's like saying, hey, how to make money doing webcomics. It's like, but there is a place for it, absolutely. And like depending on how dedicated you are and how much time and energy you have and how much support, like that can go places. It can. So
we're a little bit over time, but I just wanted to ask everybody really quickly, where can our viewers follow you on the web or see more of your work?
You can, of course, go to YouTube and go youtube.com/ was it like Lackadaisy comic, and you can find the Lackadaisy pilot there. You can also just search Lackadaisy pilot and it will be there. Lackadaisy.com, of course, so that's LACKADAISY.com to find the main website, where you can find Tracy Butler's original comic there and links to everything else you could possibly need, including social media. My own website is fablepaint.com. So that's like my name and then just paint, like the medium, not pain, like the feeling. But
sometimes.
Yeah, and you can find me under that name pretty much everywhere. So
you can find me at my portfolio is jacobmccaw.com. Nice, easy, simple. You can find me on Twitter at Jacob C. McCaw, because just my name was taken. And yeah, usually through either of those, like I'm constantly sharing my work or work of like my friends or just cool work. I'm there, I guess.
My YouTube and Instagram, it's meow, like the cat sound, and then the numbers 286. And then on Twitter, my username is Captain Kiddo, but instead of a C, it's a K and a Y. That's it. Oh, and then my Tumblr is also like meow286, and then Captain Kiddo I have 2, because one was my Warrior Cats blog, but I'm like, I can't use this shit no more. But I still post on there sometimes.
You can find me on Random Heary, like on both Instagram and Twitter. I'm pretty much active on both.
All right.
I do also have an Instagram, Jacob C. McCaw.
I have an Instagram, but it's dead. Don't
Died.
follow me. Check out my Tumblr. You can ask me questions on my Tumblr, and I have a Twitter. That's where a lot of bullshit happens.
Yeah.
And then they can see Chair and Guppy on your Twitter.
You can see Chair and Guppy if you want to see the noseless cat. Who
You
is
can find me on Club Penguin.
Very good.
Well,
you can find me on Ponytown at.
You can find me on
Zenga.com.
Ponytown.
Thank you, Sam, Jacob, Anthony, for joining us for this live stream about your work on Lackadaisy. And I also want to thank our audience for taking part in today's discussion. For anyone interested in sharpening their animation skills or starting a new job at a studio, we've just opened registration for the September sessions of our instructor-led training courses. So whether you're interested in getting more comfortable in Harmony or Storyboard Pro, or you're interested in learning cutout animation, rigging, or compositing, artists can sign up for sessions to get the same instruction that we provide to studios. That's toonboom.com/training. Next week, we'll be rebroadcasting our interview with Julia Scholl on her thesis film, Legend of Pee-Pee, who was also on Lackadaisy crew. So if you missed it the first time, catch it next week. And thank you for joining us. We hope you tune in next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Go to bed.
Nico says bye-bye. Right, Nico? Yeah.
I wanted to